Throwaway because my cousins stalk my main, and I prefer to keep my popcorn consumption private. If this wedding ring soap opera ends up on some drama channel, at least I'll have done my civic duty. I'm typing on a laptop balanced between a bag of frozen peas and my fiancé's snoring head, so brace for typos. Length? Titanic. Tone? Petty with a purpose. Moral? Bigots shouldn't hide glass skeletons in houses made of steaming hypocrisy. First, context. I grew up in Cedar Falls, a Bible Belt town where attendance was law. Mom played piano, Dad preached iron. I realized I liked boys in 8th grade swim practice, and chlorine couldn't drown shame when somebody yelled, "Pastor Dan's son is Sodom bound." From that day forward, I became a one-kid espionage agency. I joined every youth group activity, memorized verses by the 100, and dated exactly 3 cheerleaders in a desperate bid for camouflage. At home, Dad held nightly devotionals longer than sitcom reruns. Any question smelled like rebellion, so I learned to answer with psalms and a smile. Mom worried in micro-gestures, fresh cookies left outside my door when sermons got harsh, whispered reminders that God was also love, not just wrath. Still, she bowed to Dad's authority like everyone else. Our house echoed with hymns and fear, a harmony I mistook for holiness. Every Sunday, Dad preached about family values, and every Sunday I felt the pew splinters digging a little deeper into my spine. By senior year, I had a scholarship locked, a polite girlfriend, and a secret future written only in journal pages as I hid inside a geometry textbook. I thought I could graduate, move out, and never ignite the powder keg. Dad's sermon the next morning was on Sodom. I sat in the balcony, heart rattling against my ribs, as he thundered about filthy urges corrupting the youth. After the benediction, he beckoned me to his office. Waiting on the desk were my packed suitcase, the text message of Lucas's kiss, and an open Bible. Dad spoke quietly, almost gently, which turned out to be a far more effective blade than shouting. "I love you, son," he said, "but love can't compromise truth. You can choose Christ or that." He gestured at the grainy phone photo like it was pornography. I chose myself. In 60 seconds, I lost my home, my car, my college fund, and the delusion that blood automatically guarantees love. Mom tried to follow me out, but Dad's glare froze her. Aunt Ruth, Dad's agnostic older sister, arrived in a rattling Honda an hour later, rolled down the window and said, "Get in, kid, you're late for real life." Ruth deserves a medal and a sitcom. She took me in without conditions, taught me how to file taxes, how to drink cheap wine without grimacing, and how to answer intrusive questions with scarier questions. I worked 2 part-time tech jobs, wrangled scholarships, and graduated with only moderate debt. On a cybersecurity forum, I met Mark, whose idea of flirting was sending me RFC memos annotated with memes. He moved from Seattle to Cedar Falls claiming low rent, but really because, as he later admitted, Midwest boys make better coffee. Aunt Ruth called it my big, weird, functional family stacked in a 3-story walk-up. Meanwhile, Dad maintained 0 contact. Birthday cards came unsigned, clearly Mom's handwriting. The church doubled in size, thanks to his Family First lecture circuit. Every billboard was another reminder that the man who erased me was being paid to talk about love. I built a life anyway. I learned to cook beyond ramen, saved an emergency fund, and started therapy. The anger cooled from nuclear to background radiation. Still there, humming, sometimes lighting the dark when motivation lagged. Then, last November, that quiet fury found fresh fuel. It was a Saturday, gray and chilly. Mark was at a gaming tournament, and I was refactoring somebody else's spaghetti code at Midtown Coffee, headphones in, caffeine IV drip engaged. When I stretched, my eyes drifted over the top of my laptop, and there was Dad. He wore jeans and a Captain America hoodie, items I would have sworn burst into flames upon touching his skin. Beside him sat a little girl in sparkly unicorn leggings. He slid her a steaming cup crowned with a mountain of whipped cream, then let her sprinkle cinnamon on top, a privilege I'd been denied for ordering at age 10. She giggled, calling him Daddy Dan. For a few seconds, I honestly believed I'd faint. Instead, I picked up my phone, took a discreet picture, and texted Ruth. Emergency WTF level purple. She replied with an address to her office and 3 skull emojis. By nightfall, Ruth had assembled a dossier. The girl's mother, Lydia Ramirez, was a nurse Dad's church had sponsored on a medical missions trip 8 years ago. Paper trail, apartment lease co-signed by Dad, a joint savings account, and monthly transfers from a church fund labeled Camp Gideon Youth Retreat, the same fund Dad used every year to shame parents into paying for their kids' summer revival camp. 2 pieces clicked brutally into place. First, Lydia's daughter, Marisol, was 8, conceived around the time Dad kicked me out. Second, Mom's bank account, which Dad managed, never reflected those transfers. He wasn't just having an affair. He was financing a parallel life using money parishioners thought went to mosquito nets and Bibles. Ruth sipped bourbon and asked the question that had been stalking me since prom. "What do you want, kid? Revenge or peace?" My answer surprised neither of us. Both, but if I have to choose, I want him to feel the public shame he fed me. The next 3 weeks felt like prepping for an exam, where the grade determined whether your soul advanced to the next level. Mark built a secure cloud folder nicknamed Operation Cinnamon, after the cocoa powder on Dad's forbidden hot chocolate. Ruth compiled financial statements, notarized whenever possible. I dug through old church newsletters, highlighting every sermon title about honesty, humility, or sexual purity. We cross-referenced timestamps on wire transfers with Dad's preaching schedule to prove he'd signed off personally. We didn't just want smoke, we wanted the whole inferno. Ruth leveraged a divorce attorney friend to quietly subpoena copies of ledgers from the church's accountant, an 80-year-old deacon who'd been stonewalling the board about transparency for years. Turns out he kept paper records in a fireproof safe, and the safe combination was his wedding anniversary, information sitting openly on Facebook. Sometimes villainy collapses under its own laziness. Mark and I even drove 2 hours to the lakeside cabin Dad had registered under Lydia's name. The porch light was on. In the trash, we found a grocery receipt listing vegan butter and lactate milk. Dad used to claim digestive issues were punishment for gluttony. The hypocrisy was so thick, the pine trees seemed embarrassed. Every artifact was photographed, timestamped, and uploaded twice. We printed color copies and stashed them in separate places. Mark teased that our dining table looked like the conspiracy board of a Netflix thriller. I said it was more like a sermon illustrated. The pièce de résistance came when Ruth approached Lydia under the guise of offering pro bono tax help. Lydia, thinking Ruth was a sympathetic church member, confessed that Danny planned to tell his wife once the church paid off its mortgage, maybe next year. He didn't want to jeopardize donations before that. Ruth recorded the conversation. Legal in our state, as long as one party consents. Lydia's weary voice describing my father's promise of a fresh start made something in me crystallize into diamond-hard resolve. He'd thrown me away to keep his image immaculate, yet had built an entire shrine to hypocrisy in secret. By then, Thanksgiving loomed like Judgment Day. Mom texted the annual invite, cautiously adding, "Dad says grace, but you carve the turkey this year if you're comfortable." Mark raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, I'm comfortable." Our strategy session ran late that night. Option A, send anonymous evidence to the elder board and skip the family circus. Option B, live demonstration worthy of pay-per-view. We picked B for one reason. Dad weaponized public opinion against me. The least I could do was return the favor with interest. We rehearsed like actors. Assuming the gathering started at 2, the reveal needed to happen after everyone was comfortably full, but before pie. Peak drowsiness for maximum honesty, minimal volatility. Ruth's job, guard the power outlet powering the living room television. Mark, handle tech, cue slideshow, backup video to cloud in real time. My role, narrator. We even pre-wrote transitions. Slide 3 shows the joint savings account. Click. Slide 4 shows the ledger entry where camp money disappeared. The morning arrived icy and bright. I put on a navy blazer, Mark wore a cranberry sweater, and we brought vegan pumpkin pie so nobody could accuse us of arriving empty-handed. Mom greeted us at the door, eyes shining. She hugged Mark first. Progress that would have made 18-year-old me cry if I hadn't needed the reserve for later. Dad appeared from the den wearing a burgundy tie. His expression faltered when he saw Mark holding my hand, but he forced a smile. It looked painful, like a pulled muscle. "Eli," he said, voice polished. "Thank you for coming home." I said, "Wouldn't miss it." That was true, though not for the reasons he assumed. Dinner unfolded in a haze of small talk. I noticed Dad avoiding lactose products with the precision of a sworn vegan. Marisol's dietary quirks echoed in my head. When the last plate was cleared, I stood. "Family," I said. I put together some memories to share. Dad's knuckles went white around his water glass. Mark connected the HDMI cable. The first image landed on the screen. Dad laughing with Marisol at Midtown Coffee, whipped cream mustache visible. Gasps ping-ponged around the room. I let them settle, then said, "Slide 2. Click. Lydia and Dad arm in arm, cabin in the background. Click. Marisol's birth certificate. Click. Spreadsheet of wire transfers." Each click was another beat in the drumline of his downfall. I spoke calmly, sprinkling timestamps and dollar amounts so no one could claim embellishment. A cousin muttered, "Holy crap," and started filming. Dad tried to interject after slide 6. "Those funds were for outreach," he stammered. I advanced to slide 7, ledger entries highlighted in neon. Outreach indeed. He lunged toward the TV. Ruth swung her cane like a fencer, blocking the plug. The room, half horror, half gossip ecstasy, watched the man who'd preached about temptation lose a wrestling match to an octogenarian. Mom sat frozen, face draining. When the slideshow ended on Leviticus 19:11 and the word "Amen" beneath, you could hear ice shift in the cooler. Mom finally whispered, "Daniel, is this?" Emotion clogged her throat. Dad tried for gentleness. "Karen, honey, God's working in mysterious ways." He reached for her hand. She pulled back like he was molten iron. I said, loudly enough for the camera microphones, "I was disowned for loving a consenting adult. Dad used church funds to bankroll adultery while telling me I was unworthy of family. Pick your sins, people." Cousin Abby, future lawyer, asked, "Is the money traceable?" Mark chimed in, "Every penny. Copies are already in the elder board's inbox." Mom stood, smoothed her apron, and disappeared upstairs. She returned with Dad's leather duffel. "Out," she said. One word, no tremor. Dad's eyes darted, measuring exits versus allies. None remained. He walked toward the door, opening his mouth to beg. Grandma Ellen beat him there. "We taught you better." Grandpa followed with, "You'll repay every cent." Dad stepped onto the porch, and the door shut behind him like a verdict. Silence. Then Ruth, queen of timing, asked if anyone wanted pie. Laughter erupted, giddy and brittle. Relief, shock, triumph. Thanksgiving cocktail shaken, not stirred. That night, I uploaded a short update to my tiny LGBTQ support subreddit. Sometimes karma needs a projector. The post blew up while I slept, but the bigger explosion happened offline. Sunday morning, the church parking lot looked like a muted carnival. Reporter vans, parishioners arguing, the elder board locking doors. Dad never took the pulpit again. By Wednesday, an emergency congregational meeting voted to place him on indefinite leave, pending a forensic audit. The audit uncovered $68,000 diverted over 8 years. That crossed from ecclesiastical sin into felony territory. Dad was arrested trying to withdraw a cashier's check before the freeze order landed. His mugshot featured the same burgundy tie, now wrinkled, collar askew. Mom filed for divorce immediately, citing financial abuse. She also sued for half of the retirement Dad had secretly rolled into an annuity, naming Lydia as beneficiary. Grandma paid her legal retainer. The family solidarity that once kept Dad untouchable now formed a phalanx against him. Mark and I accompanied Mom to the first mediation session. Dad glared until the judge entered. Then he wilted. When the mediator asked if reconciliation was possible, Mom answered, "I already reconciled losing my son. I won't reconcile losing my dignity." News coverage died down after New Year's, but the gossip never fully cooled. Lydia moved in with her parents. Ruth quietly arranged pro bono representation for Marisol's child support claim, because the kid deserved diapers, not scandal. The rest of Dad's defenders trickled away like air from a punctured balloon. He ended up renting a basement room from an elderly bachelor on the edge of town. I got promoted, partly because my boss was obsessed with the drama and kept calling me the whistleblowing wizard. Mark and I set a wedding date for October. Mom practices her walk down the aisle entrance like it's cardio. Grandpa offered to brew the craft beer favors. Grandma banned any sermonizing during speeches. We've had enough prophets. 6 months later, the fallout had rippled far beyond my family tree, and I figured an update belonged here too. Dad's trial date is set for August. The preliminary hearing was open to the public, so Mark and I attended out of morbid curiosity. Dad shuffled in wearing an ill-fitting suit I didn't recognize, apparently Goodwill Couture. He refused to look at the gallery, but his lawyer glanced at me, then whispered something to him. Dad turned, saw me holding Mark's hand, and the muscle twitched above his eye, that same tell from my childhood when he'd been caught exaggerating attendance numbers. Inside the courtroom, the prosecutor outlined charges: wire fraud, misuse of charitable funds, tax evasion. Each count felt like a footnote on the sermon he gave the day after prom. The defense tried to paint him as a misguided visionary who intended to repay the money. The judge asked one question: did you or did you not produce false financial statements to hide personal expenses? Dad answered yes. That ended the ballad of excuses. Outside, a cluster of ex-parishioners approached me. I braced for confrontation, but they just wanted to apologize. One woman, Mrs. Garrison, handed me a tin of lemon bars and said, "I believed everything he said about people like you. I'm so very sorry." It was the strangest reverse communion of my life. I thanked her, accepted the dessert, and later ate it on the courthouse steps with Mark. They were excellent, if a bit too sweet. Mom is thriving. She traded piano lessons for a job at the public library, dyed her hair silver blonde, and started taking weekend trips with a retired art teacher named Sheila. Watching her rediscover autonomy is like seeing sunlight hit a room that's been shuttered for decades. She still attends therapy, sometimes calls me afterward just to laugh at how absurd life can be. Neither of us mentions Dad unless the lawyer emails. Ruth keeps reminding me revenge isn't a life purpose, it's a checkpoint. She's right. I'm learning to let the anger be background music, not the main anthem. Mark and I planted herbs on the balcony. Every time I clip basil for pasta, I smell possibility instead of smoke. Our wedding invitations went out last week. The RSVP card includes a line for pronouns, which made Grandma cheer. Progress moves in unpredictable spirals. Sometimes I drive past the church at night, not sure what I'm looking for. The stained glass windows still glow, but the parking lot is half empty. I feel sadness, not victory, staring at those empty spaces. If Dad had chosen honesty, both lots, church and heart, could be full. His loss, not mine. The best revenge, Ruth claims, is living well. I'm giving it my best shot, one ordinary joy at a time. One last thing before I log off and let the internet dissect this saga. If you're sitting on a truth that's eating you alive, consider the cost of silence. Secrets are debts with compound interest. They never stay static. The night before Thanksgiving, I almost deleted the slideshow, terrified my revenge would hurt innocent people. What changed my mind was remembering 18-year-old me staring at a locked bedroom door, thinking the shame would swallow him whole. He deserved justice, an answer, and a future unchained from someone else's curated delusion. Truth unlocks exits. Do I forgive him? No. Forgiveness is a gift, not an obligation, and I'd rather spend that energy loving the people who proved worthy. Dad tried to weld shame onto my identity. I returned it to him, embossed with receipts. The poet Audre Lorde said, "Your silence will not protect you." I'd add, "Sometimes your projector will." So, internet strangers, hug your queer kids, audit your church image, and remember, you can't bully someone into the closet when you're the one hiding skeletons. TLD, Pastor Disowned's gay son, funds secret second family, gets exposed via Thanksgiving slideshow, loses everything. Turns out hypocrisy pairs poorly with pumpkin pie. Edit. For those asking if I'll reconcile if he apologizes, an apology is a doorbell. I'll still choose whether to open the door. Right now, the porch light's off. Let him find his own couch to sleep on.